Do you feel frustrated that your renewed enthusiasm to get on the yoga mat and recommit to movement has fallen flat because of a nagging hip injury that keeps flaring up? Have you found yourself wondering if yoga is really for you, or if you've passed your expiry date and it's time to trade in your yoga pants for a swimsuit and bathing cap at your local water aerobics pool? Before you go ahead and list all your lululemon leggings on Marketplace, there's a few things you should know about how to modify your yoga practice to protect your hip and rebuild the supporting muscles. That may even reduce the overall pain and symptoms you experience day to day. Hi, I'm Cathy from Tribalance Yoga, and I help women who practice yoga who are struggling with hip pain on the mat to navigate their practice without having to stop practicing altogether, and ultimately to transform their movement potential through specialized yoga programs. While there are many different causes of hip pain that can present on the mat, and I've unpacked a few of the most common in some of my previous videos, today I'm going to speak to hip osteoarthritis and how it may show up in your practice and off the mat too. So what is hip osteoarthritis, or OA for short? Basically, it's a wear and tear degenerative change associated with a permanent loss of cartilage. The hip is a ball and socket joint with cartilage that covers the bony surface of the socket, called the acetabulum, and the head of the femur, the ball. OA occurs when this cartilage has worn down from repeated loads. And while this is a natural occurrence with age, there are some activities and factors that cause it to wear out sooner than expected. You may be wondering, what causes the cartilage to wear out sooner? There's three factors at play here. The first is a lack of passive stability. Genetic factors like your particular anatomy, the shape of the bones, the depth of the acetabulum, the hip sockets, loose ligaments associated with joint hypermobility syndrome or secondary to pregnancy and childbirth. The second is reduced active stability. That's weak and under-engaged glutes and core, usually associated with too much sitting and poor posture and movement patterns. And finally, lifestyle, excessive compression loads, for example in long distance running or movement practices involving extreme ranges of motion like gymnastics, dance, and certain yoga poses, especially when there's also reduced passive and active stability. A really important concept to unpack here is skeletal variation. What is skeletal variation, you ask? Basically, it's that not all skeletons are created equally. In fact, when it comes to our hips, which are a ball and socket joint, we are incredibly varied. Differences occur from person to person in terms of the shape and depth of the hip sockets, the shape and size of the ball, the head of the femur, and the angle of the neck of the femur. The orientation of the sockets, whether they face more forwards, backwards, or straight down. Importantly, all of these variations will lead to variability in the range of motion that can be achieved in the joint. This means that certain activities can be more suitable for certain hips. For example, the repetitive impact loading in running is more suited to deeper hip sockets than shallow hip sockets. as they have more passive stability and shock absorbing capacity than those with shallow hip sockets. Those with shallow hip sockets may experience more translatory movement of the bony surfaces on each other, leading to more wear and tear. In yoga, the person with shallow hip sockets, especially ones that face more towards the back, retroverted, will find many yoga poses more accessible and will be less likely to force their hips into compression to achieve a certain desired alignment in the pose. And this is true also for dancers. The challenge for these bendy yogis is applying enough active stability through good supporting muscular engagement to minimize any excess translation of the bony surfaces and subsequent wear and tear of the cartilage. People with this particular anatomy, the shallow and retroverted hip sockets, as well as connective tissue laxity, are also usually more drawn to yoga in the first place, as they are naturally bendy and can do advanced poses more easily because of their increased range. So the incidence of hip OA amongst long-term yoga practitioners tends to be higher. Although yogis with deeper hip sockets tend to have greater stability and less wear and tear, injuries and excess wear and tear often do occur when the ego gets in the way, and we tend to push too hard into these extreme ranges of motion that are just often not accessible for those with this anatomy type. While it's true, yoga is for everybody, with its multitude of tools to help us live a better life, it's perhaps not so true that all yoga poses are a good fit for every body. If you're working with OA in one or both hips and you've struggled to navigate certain poses in your practice, I created a resource just for you. It's a free Happy Hips pose modification guide with 30 plus ways to modify your practice to support and protect your hips. I've created a link in the description below. Are you now feeling more informed and empowered to navigate your practice, but still have some questions like, is yoga actually good or bad for hip OA? Or how much range of motion is enough? Is more better? How much range of motion is too much? I answer these questions in my upcoming video. Look out for it in my next email to you. I'm here to support your highest movement potential. Namaste.